Rideshare workers in the state of New York have won a whopping $328 million settlement after an investigation found that Uber and Lyft were engaging in wage theft. Now, through an investigation launched by Attorney General Letitia James, the state found that from around 2014 to 2017, Uber and Lyft were systematically taking money from their employees and lying to them about it. Now, here's how their scheme worked, according to ABC News. From 2014 to 2017, Uber deducted sales taxes and black car fund fees from drivers' payments when those taxes and fees should have been paid by passengers, the Attorney General's office said. So the black car fund is like an injury compensation fund for rideshare and taxi drivers in the state of New York. And that money, again, was supposed to come from the passengers' fees, but instead Uber and Lyft decided to take that money from the driver's pay. In addition, Lyft used a similar method to shortchange drivers from 2015 to 2017, deducting an 11.4% administrative charge from drivers' payments in New York equal to the amount of sales tax and black car fund fees that should have been paid by riders. So not only were they doing this with the black car fund fee, they were also doing it when it came to sales taxes, the very sales taxes that the customers are supposed to pay, not the drivers, not the workers. There were other violations as well. Uber misrepresented the deductions made to drivers' pay in their terms of service, telling drivers that Uber would only deduct its commission from the driver's fare and that drivers were entitled to charge the passenger for any tolls, taxes, or fees incurred, though no method to do this was ever provided via the Uber driver app. And finally, Uber and Lyft also failed to provide drivers with paid sick leave available to employees under New York City and New York State law. So I'm happy to share that Letitia James decided to go after this, investigated this, her office did, and they found that wage theft did in fact take place. They decided to go after these rideshare companies and they did secure a $328 million settlement as a result. I love to hear these types of news stories or read these types of news stories because it's one of the rare instances where you see the government working on behalf of ordinary people. So big ups to Letitia James for taking on this case.
Big ups. Okay, so
get it together.
All right. Look, some people on the left, let's keep it real, hate Uber and Lyft, and I get why. They say, oh, they're abusing their workers because it's part-time and they should have benefits, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem is when you go to try to fix that, you sometimes do more damage than good. I've talked to tons of Uber drivers about this. They're not unanimous at all, but a huge percentage of them say, no, just let me do the thing that I want to do. It's so important to my income. Don't regulate it away, right? On the other hand, the Republicans say, no regulation, free market should rule. So then are they allowed to just steal from their workers? Because that's exactly what they were doing.
Well, with no oversight and no regulation, yeah, they would be able to do that.
Yeah. So here's a reasonable answer. Why don't we do normal regulation, reasonable regulation, where we say, hey, you know what? Yeah, you could have a part-time job with Uber and Lyft, but you're not allowed to steal from the drivers, right? Because this is literal theft. And so I love that they did this. Thank you. The government working for you
for
in
the
New
people.
York. Yes.
Yeah.
And so look, I wrote about this in my book. I call it democratic capitalism. You cannot have capitalism without democracy checking it, because otherwise it just turns into corporatism. And
crony capitalism.
Yeah, or crony capitalism. Both mean the same exact thing, corporatism and crony capitalism, where they capture the government and then they go, oh, we do not want any regulation, which means I don't want any cops checking in on what I'm doing because I was in the middle of a robbery. So thank you to, in that case, the government that acted as cops to stop this robbery.
Absolutely. Now I want to share the stories of a few rideshare workers. Uber owes me $25,000, said Malang Gassama. Lyft owes me about $3,000, kind of giving you a sense of how much this financially impacted the rideshare workers. Despite working 60 hours a week, Lamin Jada, a Gambia native, said he only made about $500 a week. He's expecting about $10,000 from the settlement. Quote, "I'm going to help my family," Jada said, "and I was going to school, but I couldn't afford to pay it, so I'll go back to school again." So this is gonna have real life positive benefits for these workers' lives, and I love to see that. And thankfully, the settlement won even more good news for these rideshare drivers, because Uber and Lyft agreed to an earnings floor guaranteeing drivers across the state are paid a minimum rate. Uber and Lyft drivers will now also receive guaranteed paid sick leave. And in regard to the settlement, when it was first announced, by the way, in November of last year, but under that settlement, Uber and Lyft will be paying $290 million and $38 million to their drivers respectively, and more than 100,000 employees will now be eligible to receive money from that settlement.
So I just want to ask Republicans again, you really think there should be no regulation? Like, so, I mean, look at the giant numbers there. One guy's gonna get $10,000, they had stolen $10,000 from him, from his hard work.
Right.
The other lady or person, $28,000. Imagine you work your ass off and your employer steals $28,000 from you. You don't think they should be regulated? Of course you need regulations. That's so obvious. It's so frustrating that for our entire lives, we've lived with a media and politics that gaslights us so much. And like this idea of like, oh, deregulation is always great. Doesn't it depend? Of course it depends. And so again, thrilled that we had victory here.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.